Dusk settles over Royal Lodge with a kind of deliberate calm, as though the building itself were holding its breath. Its windows catch the last traces of light, revealing nothing and everything at once. This is a house built on continuity, a place meant to outlast stories rather than be consumed by them. Yet today, it stands at the centre of one of the monarchy's most persistent paradoxes. For within these walls live two people whose partnership endured long after their marriage ended, defying both convention and expectation. Sarah Ferguson and Prince Andrew have spent more than 30 years navigating a bond that refuses to fit the usual royal script. Divorced, yet deeply familiar. Criticised, yet quietly protective of one another. Their lives now unfold in a space between separation and solidarity, a space few royal figures have occupied so openly. And in that space lies the contradiction that continues to draw the public back to their story. A relationship that outlived its formal title, yet never shed its emotional weight. Observers often speak of habit, of history, of shared hardship, of the peculiar gravity that can pull two people together even when circumstance pushes them apart. But the deeper question lingers. How did a couple who stepped away from the centre of royal life become so entwined with debates about its integrity? How did a narrative, once celebrated as modern, even refreshing, evolve into a source of quiet concern? The story begins here, with this tension between affection and consequence. In a monarchy defined by symbolism, theirs is a bond that challenges the clarity those symbols depend upon. Some relationships simply survive time. Others, as their suggests, begin to reshape it, leaving consequences in their shadow. Reinvention rarely announces itself with fanfare. More often it begins quietly, in small decisions, tentative steps, and the slow gathering of courage after public certainty has fallen away. For Sarah Ferguson, that reinvention began the moment she stepped beyond the palace gates, leaving behind a title that had defined her and stepping into a world eager to define her again on its own terms. What followed was not a single transformation, but a series of them, each layered with sincerity, strategy, and a quiet determination to be more than the caricatures written in early headlines. Her emergence as an author marked one of the first shifts. Page by page, she offered stories that blended imagination with optimism, a gentle counterpoint to the scrutiny that had once surrounded her personal life. Then came the charity work, tireless, often unglamorous, grounded in children's welfare and community projects. Reports from the time describe an energy that felt both earnest and urgent, as though she were striving to replace public missteps with tangible contribution. Interviews from those years show a woman leaning into responsibility, speaking with warmth, sometimes with vulnerability, and always with a clear desire to prove that purpose could outlast notoriety. Television appearances followed, each one shaping a new facet of her public identity. She laughed, she explained, she motivated. And beneath the studio lights lay an unspoken tension. Every moment of progress remained shadowed by the question of authenticity. Was she rebuilding herself or rebuilding goodwill? In truth, she seemed to be doing both, and the audience, knowingly or not, became part of the process. Yet through all these professional shifts, one constant remained: her role as mother. To Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, she was not a headline, but a source of steadiness. Their visible affection in public engagements softened perceptions that had once been unforgiving. It revealed a quieter dimension to her reinvention. The simple, steadying work of raising two daughters under pressures few families ever encounter. In this, she found not just reputation, but grounding. Still, a more delicate thread ran through her narrative: the enduring connection to Prince Andrew. Even as she built new ventures, new partnerships, and new public personas, this link remained woven through her story. Observers noted that every step towards independence seemed accompanied by questions about reliance: emotional, financial, domestic. Her attempts to stand separately were respected, yet always viewed through a lens that included him. This, ultimately, is the complexity of her rebuilt image. It is admirable in its persistence, sincere in its intention, and fragile in its reception. Reinvention, for Sarah Ferguson, was never a simple ascent. It was a negotiation between past and present, between public expectation and private loyalty, between who she had been and who she hoped to become. In the soft hush of Royal Lodge, where corridors hold memories more faithfully than they hold sound, there exists a subtler story, one woven not from scandal, but from strain. For all the warmth and familiarity that shaped Andrew and Fergie's shared domestic life, the foundations beneath it were far less secure. Behind the polite rituals of shared meals, familiar routines, and well-worn patterns lay pressures that rarely reached public view, yet quietly shaped the choices they made. For Sarah Ferguson, the echoes of past financial troubles lingered long after the headlines faded. Reports over the years described debts that ballooned beyond expectation, business ventures that struggled to find footing, and a public persona that sometimes outpaced private stability. With each attempt to rebuild came the weight of reckoning. Letters, negotiations, arrangements that required tact, humility, and endurance. The efforts were sincere, but the consequences accumulated, forming a kind of persistent background noise she could never entirely silence. Prince Andrew, meanwhile, faced a different kind of burden, one centred not on financial miscalculation, but on reputation and responsibility. As scrutiny intensified around him, the walls of Royal Lodge became both shelter and symbol. The home offered continuity, yet it also contained the growing tension of a life no longer aligned with its surroundings. Together, they inhabited an unusual reality. Two people shaped by the monarchy, yet standing increasingly apart from its quieter expectations. In this setting, their companionship took on a deeper resonance. What the public interpreted as pleasant familiarity was, in truth, a negotiation of loyalty and necessity. They provided one another with something the outside world could not: understanding free from judgment, and a refuge from pressures that came from entirely different directions, yet landed with similar weight. Theirs was not a grand romantic revival, nor a calculated arrangement, but a kind of mutual holding pattern born of shared history and the human need for steadiness. Observers noted that the institution itself kept a respectful distance. The royal family has long understood the complexities of internal loyalty, yet it also recognises the delicate optics of public perception. As Andrew's challenges grew, Fergie's continued presence by his side carried a dual meaning. She offered him emotional constancy. Yet her loyalty also served as a reminder of how intertwined their stories remained, despite efforts to move forward independently. Here, the hidden cost emerges with clarity. Loyalty, in its truest form, is rarely tidy. It requires resilience in the face of public skepticism, a willingness to absorb pressures that are not wholly one's own, and an acceptance that private bonds may come at the price of public certainty. What Andrew and Fergie shared was not simply companionship, but a commitment to weather the unspoken, the unresolved history-gathering weight just out of view. There comes a point in every royal narrative when the familiar rhythm falters, when years of quiet negotiation with the public suddenly give way to a sharper, more unforgiving scrutiny. For the Yorks, that shift arrived with astonishing speed. What had once been regarded as a slightly unconventional domestic arrangement was abruptly reframed through a far harsher lens, transformed by events that rippled far beyond the walls of Royal Lodge. It was here that the atmosphere changed. Measured curiosity gave way to concern, and the public mood, steady for so long, tipped into something altogether more demanding. As controversies surrounding Prince Andrew emerged, the national conversation altered almost overnight. Institutions that had long embraced him began to distance themselves with deliberate caution. Charities paused associations. Public engagements were reviewed, then withdrawn. The language surrounding him shifted from affectionate familiarity to sober assessment. Even the press, which had once treated the Yorks with a blend of bemusement and indulgence, adopted a tone that felt markedly more severe. The change was not theatrical, it was clinical. A recalibration of what accountability should look like for a figure once woven into the fabric of public life. Through this, Fergie remained at Royal Lodge, continuing the pattern of shared domesticity that had defined the last decades of their lives. Yet her presence, once interpreted as harmless loyalty, took on new significance. Commentators noted the visual symbolism: her arrival at the gates, her occasional public remarks, her unwavering proximity. She had not sought a role in this unfolding moment, yet circumstance placed her squarely within its frame. Observers debated whether her steadfastness signalled compassion or complication, a reminder of how personal loyalty can clash with public expectation. Inside the institution, the shift was equally profound. The monarchy, conscious of reputational fragility, adopted a stance of careful distance. Statements were measured, appearances reconsidered, roles reshaped. As Andrew stepped back from public duties, an entire chapter of royal life seemed to contract around him, leaving Fergie's position more ambiguous than ever. She became part of a picture she had not painted, yet could not fully separate herself from, a symbol of the past coherence of the York family and of the new uncertainties shadowing its future. This was the moment their bond ceased being a quiet curiosity. It became a question, one that reached beyond biography and into the realm of public ethics. For the first time, sympathy, loyalty, and accountability were no longer parallel paths. They were competing demands placed upon two people who had spent decades navigating their lives side by side. The shift was not loud, but it was decisive. A private loyalty had crossed into unmistakably public territory, and nothing that followed would remain untouched by it. After the moment of rupture came something quieter, not a collapse, but a reshaping. The Yorks did not disappear from public life. They simply moved to its margins, adjusting to a reality that had altered with little warning and even less ceremony. What followed was a period marked by subdued transitions. Prince Andrew stepping back from duties that had once defined his adult identity, household arrangements evolving with understated urgency, and the family's place within the monarchy shifting to a position that felt more peripheral, yet still undeniably present. King Charles III approached these changes with a pragmatism shaped by experience. His reign began under the expectation of modern transparency, and the challenges surrounding his brother required not only compassion, but clarity. Those familiar with this situation described a tone of measured resolve, protecting institutional stability while acknowledging the personal sensitivities involved. Across Windsor, routines long taken for granted were reconsidered. The emphasis was no longer on continuity alone, but on trust, responsibility, and the careful maintenance of public confidence. In this recalibration, the Yorks found themselves navigating a landscape where every step required discretion. For Sarah Ferguson, this phase was both an obstacle and a proving ground. She continued to write, to speak, to advocate for causes close to her heart. But the context had changed. Her public presence now carried the additional weight of association, a reminder that personal history cannot be easily separated from shared circumstance. Yet she handled this reality with a familiar resilience. Her appearances were fewer, her words chosen with greater care. The interruptions to her professional rhythm were undeniable, but so too was her commitment to remain a steady figure in her daughters' lives, offering them a sense of constancy while the world around them recalibrated. Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, already navigating careers and public responsibilities of their own, found themselves walking a delicate line, supporting their parents with quiet devotion while establishing identities independent of their family's challenges. Their consistent unity provided the public with a different lens through which to view the Yorks, not simply as subjects of scrutiny, but as a family negotiating circumstances that were both deeply personal and widely interpreted. Their presence softened the edges of a narrative often told in stark terms, reminding observers of the human realities that persist behind royal headlines. In the wider frame of the monarchy, the aftermath stands as a cautionary chapter, one shaped by media intensity, institutional adaptation, and the enduring complexities of personal loyalty played out on a national stage. It was not a dramatic downfall, but a gradual shift, a reordering of roles and expectations. And within that shift lay the cost of carrying a shared past into a future increasingly defined by accountability and restraint. In the quiet that follows years of scrutiny, a different picture begins to form, not of reunion nor of separation, but of something more intricate. Andrew and Fergie's story does not settle into the usual shapes offered by royal life. It stretches beyond titles, beyond public roles, beyond the expectations that once framed their marriage. What endures between them is a bond that refuses simplification, steady yet burdened, affectionate yet shadowed by consequence, unbroken yet undeniably altered by time. From a distance, their connection appears almost contradictory in a modern monarchy seeking clarity and accountability. Institutions thrive on definition. Their partnership resists it. They remain linked not by duty, but by years of shared history and the quiet, unspoken understanding of two people who have weathered storms together. In a world where every gesture is interpreted, their loyalty becomes both a comfort and a complication, a reminder that personal ties rarely align neatly with public narratives. As we step back, the human dimension becomes impossible to ignore. Their story is anchored by two daughters who have navigated public life with grace, and by a shared past that continues to influence choices neither could fully unmake. It is shaped by resilience, by habit, by a form of companionship that outlasts circumstance. And it sits at the intersection of two truths: that loyalty can be noble, and that it can carry weight. Here, the meditation turns inward. What does their bond reveal about forgiveness, about responsibility, about the places where affection meets consequence? Can redemption truly coexist with the lingering shadows of past decisions? And can a monarchy built on symbolism make space for relationships that remain stubbornly human, untidy, unresolved, but quietly persistent? There are no definitive answers, and perhaps that is the point. The story endures because it resists conclusion. It invites reflection rather than verdict, empathy rather than certainty. In its ambiguity lies a rare glimpse of royal life unvarnished, imperfect, complex, profoundly human. And as the candle burns to its final flicker, we are left with a simple truth. Some bonds continue, not because they are easy, but because letting them go would cost even more.